Now, the Hunt Palmer Show.
Yes! I feel like I've been waiting for this my entire life.
You're listening to the Hunt Palmer Show on 104.5 ESPN, Baton Rouge.
Jolly good fun. Jolly good.
Locking down the middle of the day.
America's favorite daytime fun show.
Live from the Mercedes-Benz of Baton Rouge studio. This is Hunt Palmer.
Welcome in. Hunt Palmer coming to you from the Mercedes-Benz of Baton Rouge studio downtown in the capital city on this Monday. Brought to you by Gulf Coast Office Products. Got Jacob Beck and Cassie Spazzali back there on the ones and twos. And lots to do here on this Lundy Gras. LSU baseball has a good weekend in Frisco. We'll talk about all of it. Tiger basketball squad took one on the chin on Saturday. We'll also chat with Reed Darcy about the women's basketball team who lost a game yesterday, but also lost one of their best players for the next week. We'll talk about Flau'jae Johnson's absence with Reed coming up in hour number 2. The NFL Combine is just about in the books, and the Saints going to move on from Tyrann Mathieu. We've got a lot to do here over the next couple of hours to lock us in here on the Hunt Palmer Show. We'll start this thing the way we start every show. That's our Genesis opening drive.
It's time for Hunt's Opening Drive, presented by Genesis of Baton Rouge.
Start with baseball. I want to be pretty clear about the messaging here before we get into the content, okay? When we talk about baseball here, we talk about things with an elevated bar. You talk about competing for SEC championships. You talk about being a top 8 national seed. You talk about getting to Omaha. You talk about winning national championships. So that's the expectation around here this time of year every year. So I'm going to be a little bit critical of LSU's pitching in this opening segment, but understand that it was a good weekend. They won 3 games. The offense was awesome. There's a ton of talent on the mound, and I'm not pushing the panic button. I felt like as I was writing my Around the Horn piece for LouisianaSports.net that you can read up there right now, it felt like I was framing things kind of overwhelmingly negative as I was typing it, and that really wasn't my intention. It's just kind of the way things spilled out, and I didn't want it to sound that way when I started talking about it on the air. So I'm being upfront here, and I'm going to say, like, we're talking about things through a championship lens here, not like a fairly competitive lens. Like, this is not the way we would talk about things with men's basketball in December. Because those expectations in December with men's basketball is, okay, can you compete in the SEC? Do you think they can be a bubble team? Can they play meaningful games into early March? Can they maybe make the NCAA tournament? Like, that's a completely different lens than we talk about with baseball around here. That's understood. So just wanted to kind of set the stage here as I'm a little bit critical of LSU's pitching because I did not think that LSU's starting pitching excelled this weekend. And while they did win every game, and while there was certainly some positive, if we're talking through a championship lens, all of those guys need to elevate a little bit. And it starts with Cade Anderson, who took the ball on Friday. And look, Cade Anderson struck out 10 of the first 20 Kansas State hitters that he faced. He was great. The breaking ball was very good. Fastball had life. He didn't throw quite as many strikes as he would like, but he did get to 92 pitches and got into the 6th inning, struck out 10 and only allowed 2 earned runs. However, for the 3rd straight start, he tapered off. In the opening start on a chilly Friday afternoon against Purdue Fort Wayne, his fastball velocity dipped in the 5th inning, and that's to be expected. Just part of early season baseball. Nothing wrong with that. But in the second time out, he lost his command late in the start. Gave up 2 walks, gave up 2 hits to Omaha, was knocked out of the game in the 6th inning. And I told you last week on Friday, like, I think he's going to be dealing against Kansas State. And for 5 innings, he was. He had 9 strikeouts. He had shut them out. He was great. And then he gave up back-to-back homers on 2 hanging breaking balls. And giving up 2 home runs is not the end of the world. LSU still won the game. But we're talking about an ace here. And we're, to further that, talking about the ace of a team that wants to compete for championships. And you got to hold your stuff into the 6th and 7th inning if you want to be that dude. And Cade Anderson hasn't quite gotten there yet. That is certainly not to suggest that he won't. He just hasn't yet. So to me, the next 2 outings for Cade Anderson are going to be vital. You're going to face one more non-conference team North Alabama, who's not any good, on Friday. He needs to be really good in that game. And then you face the worst team in the SEC to open things in Missouri, and he needs to be really good in that one. And at that point, you'll hopefully see a little bit of growth. It took Gage Jump some time to ease in as well. He got knocked around in his first few SEC starts, and by the end of the season, he was lights out. I expect that Anderson will have a great season, but he's progressing right now, and he's run out of steam 3 starts in a row. So that's the first guy. Anthony Ianson is next, and he got lit up for 3 innings by Nebraska. I mean, lit up. He was not fooling anyone. Fastball was getting ambushed. Looping breaking ball was getting hit hard. I mean, they put a 3 spot up in the first inning. They scored another one in the second. They scored another one in the third. Like, it was not good through 3 innings. Nebraska had 5 runs on 5 hits. Now, he settled in, and he gobbled up some outs. And most importantly for Ianson, when LSU started to chip away and the Tigers put up a 3 spot in the 4th, he came back, got him 1-2-3. Tigers scored again in the 5th. He comes back, strikes out the side. So when LSU turned the tide of the game, he assisted in that. But he got hit really hard early in the game. I think the biggest adjustment that Ianson made in game on Saturday was instead of going to that kind of get me over breaking ball that we've seen from him a little bit, he went to the sharper slider and he missed some more bats. He's not going to dominate. Anthony Ianson is not going to go out there in SEC games very often and go 7 innings of 9 strikeout shutout ball. Like, that's not really in the repertoire. What LSU needs from Ianson is to make sure he gets 15 to 18 outs and holds the rope. And when I say hold the rope, I mean 2 or 3 runs, not 5. Nebraska came out swinging the bats hot, no question. But Ianson bowed his neck a little bit and got LSU into the middle of the game and gave LSU a chance to win. But I didn't think he was at his best either because he got lit up, as I said, in the first few innings. He needs to take a little bit of a step in the next couple of weeks as well. And then you've got Sunday where Chase Shores was okay. I thought it was, this is the word I used in my column for Louisiana Sports Line, I thought it was an uneven outing for Chase Shores. 5 innings, 7 hits, gave up 4 earned runs, walked 3 guys, only struck out 5. He got hit a little bit. Now, it's important to put the caveat in there. LSU scored 7 runs in the second and 2 more in the third. He was staked to a 7-0 and then a 9-2 lead. So that changes the way you approach the game a little bit. And that, in that sense, it's okay to give up some hits. But Sam Houston's not any good. And they had some quality at bats against Chase Shores. I thought his slider, when he executed it, looked awesome. The fastball life was plenty. It was running and it was 98. Just not his best outing. And I think one that can be improved upon for sure. I like the way that LSU's rotation sits right now. I like Anderson at the front. I like Ianson in the middle. I love Shores as a potential guy on the back end. And I know that people are going to look at Ianson's outing and say that it doesn't look dominating and Connor Ware's coming and William Schmidt's coming, and that time may come. I'm not there yet. Those guys may work their way into the weekend rotation. Again, I'm not there yet. But as I look at LSU from a starting staff perspective this weekend, I would grade it out as a C. I did not think it was great. The pieces are great. Anderson striking out 10 of his first 20 hitters is great. Ianson throwing 2 huge goose eggs up there with perfect innings as LSU was climbing back in the game was great. Shores getting the pitch count up to 89, featuring that good slider, the velocity being up where it was, all that's very good. But again, to go back to the beginning point of this segment, we're talking about competing for championships. We're talking about guys that you're trying to count on in regionals, in supers, in Omaha. And they weren't at that level this weekend. They don't have to be in February and early March. But I'm calling it like I see it. They need to pitch better over the next couple of weeks before you get into the grind of SEC play. It is not an issue where I sit here and look at LSU's pitching staff and go, I don't think they're good enough. It's an issue of looking at them this weekend and going, they need to be a little bit better than that. And I think those are 2 very different things. The talent is there. They're executing at times. They just need to be a little bit more consistent than they were. And look, it wasn't like LSU got knocked all over the yard. Kansas State scored 5 runs on Friday, and Nebraska scored 6 runs on Saturday. That's not great, but it's not like you're getting lit up. And I thought there were some good bullpen outings as well. LSU lost the strike zone far too often on Sunday. You really don't need to be issuing 10 walks in a game like they did on Sunday. Shores issued 3. Cade Woods came in and issued 2. He's not going to be a high leverage guy, so that one's not as big a deal. Cooper Williams, who had control issues on Wednesday, came back on Sunday and issued a walk in 2/3 of an inning. Connor Benj walked 2 guys. Maverick Rizzi walked 2 more. Now, that was in the rain, so I'm not as concerned about that, but too many walks on Sunday. And then I thought on Saturday, just too many hits. Gave up 11 hits. Niansen got hit a lot early in the game. But shout out to Kason Evans, who was just named the SEC's co-freshman of the week. He was great to close the game out on Friday through 2 innings of shutout ball, struck out 3, and you got some good bullpen work from Zach Cowan and certainly William Smith, who looked great on Saturday's game, closing that thing out. The breaking ball hammer to finish it was a work of art. So I think it's something that I feel good about LSU's pitching staff, but I just didn't love it over the weekend. And I think that was the most interesting storyline of the weekend. Now, that out of the way, the offense was awesome. And I want to talk about LSU's offense, start to finish, Friday through Sunday, 1 through 9, 1 through 12, even when they went to the bench for some guys. Like, there was so much to like about what LSU did offensively against what I would consider some pretty average SEC type pitching on Friday and Saturday. I think if you look at Jacob Frost, Kansas State starter, you look at Ty Horn, Nebraska's starter, some of the bullpen arms that LSU saw over the weekend, like I think some of those guys could absolutely slot into an SEC rotation or bullpen, and LSU was clinical offensively. We'll talk about some of the standouts on the offensive side of things when we come back on the Hunt Palmer Show.
The Hunt Palmer Show.
One Bath and Closets. OneBathAndClosets.com is the website. David Duvall and his team, 30 years redesigning and remodeling bathrooms and closets. Tell you this all the time, but the Palmer fam uses bathtub every single night about 6:15. Myers man gets all the toys out. He insists on putting all 400 of them into the bathtub every single night. And he doesn't even play with them. He just takes them out and puts them in there. But we use the bathtub is the point. Maybe you don't use your bathtub. You don't take a bath, you just take showers, but you've got a bathtub in there. Maybe it's a little bit dingy, maybe it's a little bit old, maybe this doesn't look very good. Take it out. Take out that bathtub that you don't use and put in a gorgeous glass walk-in shower. Changes the functionality of the bathroom, changes the aesthetic of the bathroom, adds a little value to your home. Everybody's happy when you do that. Contact David Duvall and his team at OneBathAndClosets.com and get that free consultation. It doesn't cost you anything to sit down with David and talk about what idea you may have. Maybe you're not sure what you want to do, and he can help you through that process. Go to OneBathAndClosets.com, look at the pictures of their fantastic work, and as I mentioned, get that free consultation started this week. It's One Bath and Closets. Find them online at OneBathAndClosets.com.
You're listening to The Hunt Palmer Show, brought to you by Gulf Coast Office Products.
Monday show is brought to you by Gulf Coast Office Products. Find them online, gcopnet.com. Shout out to our guy, Trey Beal. If you're in the market for printers, scanners, copiers, Gulf Coast Office Products has got you covered. They've got clients in every single vertical market you can think of. So whatever it is that you do, they know what the needs are as far as printing, scanning, and copying goes. They can make sure you're in the right equipment at the right price. They've got a phenomenal service department as well. Just great people to work with over there at Gulf Coast Office Products. You can service you statewide wherever you are. Certainly here in Baton Rouge, they got a warehouse over $1 million of product right there on hand. Reach out to them at gcopnet.com. That is Gulf Coast Office Products. LSU was awesome on offense this weekend. Just great. Specifically over the last 2 games, LSU scored 23 runs on 30 hits. Listen to these numbers in LSU's offensive onslaught in the Saturday and Sunday games. With 2 outs in the inning, LSU was 17 for 33. That is .515 for a batting average with 2 outs. And with runners in scoring position over the last 2 games, LSU was 14 for 33. That is .424 with runners in scoring position. Just awesome execution. They did a little bit of everything in the game. You finally saw a couple of big flies as the wind was blowing out on Sunday. Stephen Milam hit a missile out to left field. Ethan Fry got one up in the jet stream and got it out. But they also executed a couple of sack bunts. Michael Braswell got 2 bunts down, and Chris Stanfield immediately came up and plated both of those times with an RBI ground out. I thought that was exceptional work. So the versatility of LSU's offense was on full display, and the biggest development of the entire weekend, unequivocally for me, was the protection that Daniel Dickinson offered Jared Jones. You look at what Kansas State was looking to do, and they were trying to pitch around Jared Jones. They walked him in the third inning with the runner on first, and immediately you saw Daniel Dickinson come up and lay down a perfect safety squeeze to play to run. Then, in the seventh, the game was tied. They walked Jared Jones intentionally with 1 on and 1 out to mean there were 2 runners on base, and Dickinson came up and hit an opposite field 3-run home run. That is exactly what LSU needs. And in that game, where very clearly Kansas State was steering around Jared Jones, you saw a 6 RBI game from Daniel Dickinson. 6 runs driven in. He's not going to do that every time, but if that fear is there to an extent, it's going to change the way that teams pitch to Jared Jones. Right now, I still think they're going to steer clear. But if we get into April and Daniel Dickinson is doing right now, is doing to SEC teams what he's doing right now, then that makes LSU's lineup really, really difficult to deal with. Because Curiel is an on-base machine up at the top. Jones fits in right there in front and behind him. And then you've got Dickinson behind those 2 guys, and he's just cleaning everything up. Right now, Daniel Dickinson in 11 games as an LSU Tiger has driven in 21 runs. Second place on LSU's list is Jones with 15, and there are only 3 guys on the entire team that have double-digit runs driven in. Daniel Dickinson has 21 RBI to this point in the calendar. He's been awesome, awesome, awesome to watch. But it was everybody, really, this weekend. I mean, Curiel was phenomenal. He's leading the team in hitting at 415. Jones is hitting 410. He's taking his walks. He leads the team with 12 of those. Stanfield's up to 375. He got a couple of RBI hits yesterday. Milam, who started out a little clunky on opening weekend, has been sizzling since. He's up to 372. Jake Brown, when given the opportunity, is hitting the ball very hard. Dickinson's been great. Josh Pearson stepped up this weekend and was knocking the ball all over the place. He had 3 doubles in 1 game. That was on Sunday against Sam Houston. If you take every position on the diamond, even catcher, where you saw Luis Hernandez come through with a couple of RBI hits yesterday, like, it's just everybody is clicking offensively, and it's exactly the kind of offense that Jay Johnson talked about LSU having. Like, they don't have 2 guys on this team that are going to hit 20 home runs. They don't. You don't have a situation where you had White and Cruz, where you had White. I mean, you don't have Braden Montgomery and Jay Laviolette from last year at A&M. Like, that's not the identity of this offense. The identity of this offense is going to be a lot of hard outs, a lot of doubles, a lot of innings where they string hits together, and a lot of guys that have the threat of a home run that aren't necessarily home run hitters. That's the kind of offense Jay Johnson wants this group to play, and I thought over the weekend you saw it in spades. Against Sam Houston, you scored 12 runs on 13 hits. Against Nebraska on Saturday, you scored 11 runs on 17 hits. They scored 11 runs on 17 hits without the courtesy of a single home run. And then on Friday against Kansas State, double-digit hits again. You had 11 of those, and you had 8 runs. So I just thought from start to finish, all weekend long, LSU was really good offensively. And that comes on the heels of a weekend against Omaha where you had a 10-inning stretch where you didn't swing the bats at all. So that's an improvement from the weekend prior with a step up in competition. I thought LSU offensively was great. And that's what they're going to have to be to compete for the things that we talk about in this part of the country every single March, April, May, June. Competing for championships. And this looked to me like a championship offense. They're still trying to figure out what they want to be, trying to figure out what they're going to do in right field. Pearson's kind of wrestling his way into the starting job right there, but they're not going to sit Brown and Larson and Fry too consistently. Those guys are going to get their chances. But Stanfield's kind of holding his ground in center field. And then you've got kind of everything else locked up. Maybe you could see some platoon at third base. Maybe Reeves could play a little bit for Braswell. Braswell's not stinging the ball. He's hitting 154, but as I mentioned, he executed a couple of bunts and got a big hit in yesterday's game. So I don't have, as critical as I was of the pitching in 3 wins, I don't have a lot of criticism right now of what LSU is doing on the offensive side of things. Jay Johnson takes a ton of pride in coaching the offensive side of the baseball. Ever since he got to LSU, the Tigers have hit, and this team doesn't appear to be an exception to that. They've got a lot of depth. They've got a lot of talent, and I thought against what appeared to me to be some average-level SEC arms, LSU's offense was just clicking from start to finish. And there have been some who are critical of LSU, quote-unquote, leaving too many guys on base. And I understand where that's coming from because LSU does leave a lot of guys on base. But the reason they leave a lot of guys on base is because they're so prolific at getting on base. And I mentioned it's hard to hold your argument when you're talking about LSU leaving too many guys on base when you look at the statistics, and with runners in scoring position in the last 2 games of the weekend, LSU hit 424. Yeah, they leave a lot of guys on base because they have a lot of guys on base. Yes, when you've got a chance to put your foot on Sam Houston's throat and you've got the bases loaded and nobody out and you don't play to run, yes, that's frustrating. That's poor execution. Dickinson swinging the ball in his eyes, that's a guy leaving his plan. That's a guy who's now is trying to think about doing too much and driving in too many runs as opposed to handling his at-bat. But LSU's not leaving too many guys on base. They're just getting a lot on base, and sometimes those guys don't come in to score. But when you're hitting 424 with runners in scoring position, you're not leaving too many guys on base. You're swinging the bat really well. And LSU's going to continue to leave guys on base because they're going to continue to get on base. They get hit by a ton of pitches, they walk a ton, and they got a lot of guys who hit the ball hard all over the field. So I thought the LSU offense was fantastic over the weekend in Frisco en route to winning all 3 games. Let's talk a little about defense. I told you in the preseason, I was like, hey, I'm a little concerned with defense in the middle of the field. I don't know who the catcher is, and I think their catching may be an issue. I've not seen Stephen Milam play shortstop, and he may not have a strong enough arm for it. I've not seen Danny Dickinson play a ton of defense. And I'm concerned with how that's going to look. Well, I'm an idiot because Stephen Milam looks awesome at shortstop. He's making plays moving to his left. He's making plays moving in. He made a couple plays to his backhand side. The arm is plenty strong enough when you use his quickness and his movement. And Dickinson has made some phenomenal plays as well, including one that saved the game on Friday. So LSU at shortstop and second base is not just okay at defense. They're great right now on the defensive side of things. Catcher's still an issue. You saw William Schmidt throw 3 straight wild pitches in a midweek game last week. You saw Kate Arambidi try to backhand short hop a low pitch from Anthony Ianson on Saturday that made the base runner go from first to third because he didn't get in front of it and block it. Like, you're still giving away some free bases at the catcher position that I would wish they wouldn't do. But as far as shortstop and second base goes, I don't have any more concerns. Everybody's going to talk about the flip play where Dickinson goes in the hole and backhand flips it to Milam, who throws across, and that was an incredible play, a highlight reel play, an entertaining play. All that is true. But I'm talking about everything else that they're doing. The routine plays, the plays that you've got to make. LSU looks really good doing it. And then they've made some fantastic plays as well, as I mentioned, with Dickinson saving the game. And right before that, Milam threw the guy off the plate that would have won the game as well. So that to me is a huge development through 3 weeks of the season, that LSU on the middle of the field and on defense has been really, really good. And that includes Chris Stanfield, who made a couple of diving catches out there in center field this weekend and looked great doing it. So I am very encouraged by what I'm seeing from LSU offensively and defensively. We'll see as things move forward what the starting pitching continues to look like. You got 2 weeks until you get ready for SEC play, so they've got I guess it's 5 games this week and then another one the next week. So 6 games before you lace them up against Missouri in the box, and they really count. So I'm encouraged by a lot of that. LSU sweeps the weekend in Frisco. We've been talking about it here on this Monday edition of the Hunt Palmer Show.
The Hunt Palmer Show.
Genesis of Baton Rouge. GenesisofBatonRouge.com is that website. Every car that is on the lot is online at GenesisofBatonRouge.com. That's where you should probably start your process. Start with GenesisofBatonRouge.com. Go through the entire inventory. Find something that may suit your fancy, whether it's the sedan, whether it's the SUV, anything in between. Take a look. They've got them all right there online. And then when you decide what you might be interested in test driving, you can either go to the lot at Airline and Piku, or you can have them come to you. You can do a remote test drive from home, from the office. They're brand ambassadors, happy to come to you to show you the difference in driving a Genesis. When I say Genesis of Baton Rouge, think luxury. When I think luxury, don't say, I can't afford that. You never know. Give it a look. Check them out online, GenesisofBatonRouge.com, GenesisofBatonRouge.com.
This is the Hunt Palmer Show, brought to you by Gulf Coast Office Products.
All your printing, scanning, copying needs, go to Gulf Coast Office Products, GCOPnet.com. LSU basketball on Saturday lost to Mississippi State 81-69. This game, I could not have forecasted this. We've watched this LSU basketball team all year. They are what they are. They're going to run out the string here over the next 2 weeks, and then it'll be in the rearview mirror. But if you would have told me, as of mid-January, that when LSU went to the hump, that they were going to only turn the ball over 9 times and only give up 8 offensive rebounds to Mississippi State, I would go, oh, that's one of their best games of the year. They'll probably win that one. And you're going to toss in the fact that Cam Carter lit it up in the first half. Like, you're checking all the boxes now. What does LSU need to do to win? Well, Cam Carter's got to be awesome. We check. In the first half, he had 18 points. You got to stop turning the ball over, which they've done now for like a month. Check. And then you got to stop getting annihilated on the defensive glass. And they did. Mississippi State, in the game, 40 minutes of action, had 9 second chance points. That's it. However, that number is skewed because you've got to look a little bit more deeply into what happened in the game. And LSU, really for the first time in a few weeks, just couldn't play defense. Like, LSU's defense, the team is not good. The results have not been acceptable. None of that is good. But statistically speaking, LSU's defense, especially on the first shot, has been pretty good this year. And they could not stop Mississippi State. They could not stop Josh Hubbard. Josh Hubbard goes for 30 points. He was 9 of 18 shooting. He didn't even shoot it well from 3, just 2 for 9. But he's 9 of 18 from the floor, and he made 10 free throws. And he goes for 30 in the game. It's his 4th career 30-point game. He also did it in the PMAC last year. And that was LSU's undoing. Mississippi State in this game shot 57% from the floor in the game. In the second half, Mississippi State shot 64% from the floor. That is just torching LSU. And interestingly, the game was really a tale of 2 halves for LSU on the offensive side. What have we said now for like better than a month? LSU basically offensively has got to go as Cam Carter goes. And Cam Carter couldn't do anything against Florida and couldn't do anything against Tennessee, and that's why LSU got smoked in those 2 games. And he was going to have to be better in this game. And he comes out in the first half, and he is on it. 7 of 9 from the floor, knocks down 4 of his 6 threes in the first half. He's back in his old stomping grounds where he once played. He's got 18 points at halftime. LSU goes to the break right there in the game. I think it was tied at halftime. Let me look. Yeah, LSU had a 2-point lead at halftime because Carter was great, had 18 points. But in the second half, Mississippi State got to him, and he was 2 of 7 from the floor. He only scored 5 points. LSU, in turn, only scored 32 points after halftime and got run off the floor. It's just like the game was a microcosm of the season for LSU. When Cam Carter's good, LSU's good, led by 2. Cam Carter goes south, LSU goes south. Because you just don't really have anybody else that you can go to help you out. LSU had 2 guys in double figures in the game. Cam had 23, and then Damian Collins had 10, and Damian Collins got to his 10 points on 3 of 10 shooting. If you take the Tigers outside of Cam Carter, who was doing basically all of the lifting the entire first half and tried earlier in the second half, but if you take Cam Carter, his output away from this team on the offensive side, the numbers get real putrid real quick. Now, while Mississippi State was just drilling shots left and right, LSU outside of Cam Carter was 16 for 48. That is 33%. LSU Tigers outside of Cam Carter from the three-point line, 4 for 26. That is 15% shooting the three outside of Carter. He just doesn't have any help. And I don't know how much Jalen Reed would have helped this team offensively. I know they were going to lean on him some, but you have gotten essentially no help at all from the point guard position. The freshman can't be counted on to be as consistent as you would like, and that was evidenced on Saturday when Victorious Miller and Curtis Givens go 0 for 6 from the floor. All of them were threes. They combined to score 3 points and turn the ball over 3 times. Like, that's what you got from your freshman starting backcourt. Jai Bailey kind of does what he does, 3 of 5 shooting, scored 7 points, but you couldn't get much of anything else. Like Mike Williams and Jordan Sears, those are your veteran guard options. They combined to go 6 for 23 from the floor and made 3 of 13 from 3. Like, that's just not even close to getting it done. And Mississippi State, we said entering the game on Friday, when we talked about this game briefly, it's like, hey, this is not your typical Chris Jans team. They're not great on defense. They're pretty good on offense. They showed that, scoring 81 points, but they held LSU to 69, and LSU just didn't have an answer. Specifically in the paint, you look at Mississippi State, outscored LSU in paint points. Let's see, where's that number? Right there, 44-20. So it's just LSU just not good enough to go on the road and beat teams that are good, especially when they play pretty well offensively, which Mississippi State was really, really efficient shooting the ball at nearly 60% for the entirety of the game. So not going to spend any more significant time on LSU basketball here on this show. I feel like I've got to mention it because we kind of cover the team, but not going to spend a bunch of segments talking about a team that's now 3-13 in league play. Got 2 more to go. They'll go to Rupp Arena on Tuesday in a game that will not go well for LSU, and then they'll come back home and play Texas A&M on Saturday. I give them an outside chance to be competitive in that one, just because there are times when Texas A&M is really bad offensively. It's like Wade Taylor, and then what else is there? But I just don't. I don't anticipate that this week will go very well, and they'll go to the SEC tournament. They'll probably play 1 or 2 games there, and then we'll be done with basketball for the year. And then we'll see if they can take this war chest that's been reported in NIL dollars and go get some more players, because that's the name of the game, is roster assembly, and LSU's got to do a better job entering the 2025-2026 season. So Tigers lose to Mississippi State 81-69. That's an 11-point loss. The number on the game, 10.5 on Vegas. So somebody knows something somewhere. Interesting. Tigers lose at 81-69. We'll come back and close out hour number 1. That's next on the Hunt Palmer Show.
The Hunt Palmer Show.
Highland Insurance Group. HighlandIG.com is that website. The Highland Insurance Group prides itself on their technical expertise. They're not here to promise you they're going to save you 20% on your insurance program. They can promise you that you'll be taken care of as far as your coverages. They've got dozens of carriers that they're contracted with as an independent broker, and they'll help you get into the proper position as a business. You never know when that hurricane's coming. You never know when that car accident's going to happen. You never know when the lawsuit's around the corner, and you want to be sure that your insurance program responds. And if you're a business owner and you're not exactly sure what your insurance says, contact the Highland Insurance Group and make sure that your policy is set up to respond. That's what they do with their audits. It's Jonathan Carver and a great team right here in Baton Rouge, the Highland Insurance Group. You can find them online at HighlandIG.com.
You're listening to The Hunt Palmer Show, brought to you by Gulf Coast Office Products.
Happy Lundy Gras out there. If you're catching some parades, appreciate you making us a little part of your day. Hopefully there's reasonable weather tomorrow.
Not looking good.
Doesn't sound like it. I know they've already made a ton of changes to the New Orleans parades. Rex has cutting out the bands, I think, and they're shortening the route and getting everybody off the street by like 11. Doesn't look great weather-wise, but if there's any consolation, the weather over the weekend was awesome.
It was.
So you'll take that. I mean, it's getting a little greedy to hope for like 6 straight days of awesome weather.
It is.
At a certain
Louisiana,
point,
it doesn't happen very often.
And like, I feel like that. What is it fair to say? 80% of people are about done with Mardi Gras today. Like,
yes.
There's 20% that are diehard. They're going to be out there for Mardi Gras. They're going to do Mardi Gras Day, whole thing. But like 80% are like, yeah, once we've done Friday, Saturday, probably a lot of Sunday. Like, that's about it.
Yeah, I think so. I think most people are done, especially because a lot of people you still have to work probably Monday and Tuesday. So
like us.
Yes.
Not the sales staff.
Nope, they're not here.
Not accounting.
No, they're not here.
Not any of the administrators.
No, they're not here.
Just
us, yeah.
Great. Does the website take the day off tomorrow?
I don't think so.
Let's think about that website. You launch the website. Website doesn't turn off.
No.
Website's always there. Always needs more. So you just got to keep feeding the beast, as they say. So we'll be here working tomorrow, unless I'm not here because I'm in the hospital or something. But
that's on the table.
It is. The plan is to be here. I'm on alert. Every time my phone lights up, I look down at it and see what's going on. But as of right now, I'm still doing the show. So here we are. Let's talk about Texas A&M's baseball team, should we? A lot of folks may not be following. I know that this is not the time of year where you're locked in on the other SEC baseball teams because they're not playing each other. A lot of the games are blowouts. But Texas A&M is in a little bit of tailspin here. They're number 1 in the country entering the week. They lost a game to Cal Poly on Sunday, came back, lost a midweek game where Texas State just smoked them. And then they go to Houston to play at Minute Maid, and they lose the first 2 games of that series too, and looked pretty lifeless doing it. On Saturday, Texas A&M had 0 runs, 4 hits, and 4 errors in a loss. So it's going to be the popular take, and I'm confident. I could run over to Texags, but I haven't. I'm confident that they're all saying our coach is a failure. We let the players decide who the coach is going to be. He's in over his head. This team's toast. This and that. And that's probably the sentiment because that's generally speaking how fans act. I'm just here to tell you this. They've still got Ryan Prager at the top of the rotation, and he's very good. I still sometimes look at him, and because he doesn't throw as hard as most aces, like his stuff doesn't look like Hagen Smith's. It doesn't look like Paul Skeens. It doesn't look like some of the great SEC aces that we've seen, but he does get a lot of outs at 91, 92 with the good breaking ball. So I got to tip my hat to the guy. He's been good for 2 years. He's good, and they've still got Jace Laviolette, and they've still got a bunch of guys like Hayden Schott who are proven SEC hitters. Caden Kent, these are names that you probably, and I'm just telling you right now, I'm not writing Texas A&M off. I know they lost 4 games in a row. I know they tumbled from number 1 to number 15 in the polls this week. I'm just telling you, I'm not off at Texas A&M, and I think they will find it. I think the hiring of Michael Early was probably a little short-sighted. You've got one of the top 15 jobs in America. I think that's fair. I could probably make the case that Texas A&M is a top 10 job in America. And you didn't even conduct a search, really. You just, Schlossnagle bailed, and you took Michael Early because you wanted to keep Jace Laviolette and Gavin Grahovic here. That process was probably a little bit flawed, but the talent on that roster is still such that I feel like you can't just throw in the towel in Texas A&M. And LSU will go to College Station later on this year, and that's just going to be a brutally difficult series to win games in. I still believe that's going to be a good Texas A&M team. I've got some questions about the back end of the bullpen. I've got some questions about the back end of the rotation. But they're going to hit eventually. They're just not going to go 56 games slumping. They've got way too many good players. Losing Grahovic is a tough deal, but they got way too many good players to completely write off. Other places in the league, you look at Tennessee, they are number 1 in the nation in the Baseball America poll. LSU is number 1 in the nation in the D1 baseball poll. I have watched all of LSU, and I've watched a few games of Tennessee. I've probably seen them play in total 3 games if you're mixing and matching. I try to pop over and see some when I can. Right now, if you made me plant my flag, I would say I like Tennessee's team a little bit more than LSU's, but it's close. I thought on paper that Tennessee was going to take a step back this year. Y'all know me. I like proven stuff. It's why I questioned Daniel Dickinson entering the year. It's why I question some of the freshman arms early, and they've been great. Because I like proven guys as opposed to projecting what guys are going to do. And they didn't have Christian Moore. They didn't have Blake Burke. They didn't have a lot of those guys that have been really key contributors. And if we're being honest, like Liam Doyle wasn't that great at Ole Miss last year. He's their Friday night starter, and he's been completely unhittable. But they've had guys step up and absolutely rake. So that's a really, really good team that Tennessee has. I think LSU is very good as well. But if you made me put a poll together right now, I would take Tennessee at number one. They went over to Houston and won all 3 games that they played in that series as well. So good effort from the boys from Knoxville. I think that's a really, really good baseball team. South Carolina, Paul Maneri's team, took it on the chin against Clemson. They lose all 3 games in that in-state series. That was not shocking. I think Clemson's very good. Cam Canarella is one of the most exciting players in the nation for Clemson, and he's just part of a good team that they've got over there at Clemson. I don't think South Carolina is very good. LSU goes to South Carolina the final week of the season, and I think that's a pretty good draw for your final weekend, because I think that South Carolina is one of the 3 worst teams in the league. And I watched a little bit of their game on Sunday, and you look at that team, and they've got Petrie, who's very good, but outside of that, it's pretty limited offensively, and they don't really have a rotation. Their supposed Friday night guy has been out for 2 weeks, and we don't know when he's coming back. And so Paul Maneri's got his hands full from a roster perspective. It's not as bad as the first team that he took over at LSU that was just about barren as far as talent goes, but it's a team that is not up to par with the elite teams in the SEC, therefore the elite teams in the country, and I expect South Carolina to have a hard time qualifying for the NCAA tournament. And they came into the weekend against Clemson undefeated. They had not lost yet, but you play a lot of bad teams. You step up in competition, it doesn't go well. That's one thing you can say about LSU is when the competition did elevate this week, and I think Kansas State's absolutely a tournament team, and I think there's a good chance Nebraska's a tournament team as well. Sam Houston's not, but those 2 teams I think are, and LSU elevated its level of play and was able to win those games. So that's a good thing for LSU. The other team that I wanted to mention briefly is Auburn. Sam Dutton started on Friday for Auburn. Cade Fisher, the Florida transfer who LSU saw in Omaha a couple of years ago, he was dealing with a little bit of discomfort in his lat, so they shut him down. Sam Dutton started on Friday for Auburn. He actually struck some guys out, but like if you're sending Sam Dutton out there on Fridays in the SEC, I'm not real confident with the squad, and that's what Auburn is looking at right now. They've got a couple of good hitters in that lineup, and I'll talk about this when I do power rankings coming up on Wednesday. But Butch Thompson's a really good pitching coach and has done more with less a lot over the course of his career. Even with Mississippi State, when he was the pitching coach there, they did some really good things with some guys that aren't necessarily big leaguers. At Auburn, they've had some big leaguers over the years. Casey Mize certainly comes to mind as the number 1 pick in the draft, but they don't have a ton of talent. This is even, I think, a step back from that. I just don't see a world where Sam Dutton is a Friday starter in the Southeastern Conference. So I wanted to kind of mention that as I'm starting to get a better handle on SEC teams. I had a chance to watch a good bit of baseball over the weekend. No parades for the Palmers as we await the edition here that's coming up. So I had a chance to watch a good bit of baseball over the weekend, and those were some of my takeaways. I'm not burying Texas A&M. I think Tennessee's really, really good. South Carolina looks not good, and Auburn looks not good. I'm still kind of torn a little bit on some of the teams in the league. I'm torn a little bit on Texas, who played great in Las Vegas over the weekend. I'm torn a little bit on Arkansas, who's having some trouble finding offense. But they're pitching great, and that's generally what they're going to do. So I'm kind of torn on them. I'm a little bit torn on Vanderbilt as well, who dropped a game to UConn over the weekend. There are still some teams that I want to see more of, but we're getting close to the start of SEC play next week. And one thing that I can tell you for sure is that LSU has gotten the best draw you can possibly get in the first game. You're talking about getting Missouri at the box in the opener. It's going to be vital that LSU gets at least 2 games in that series, because this is something we talk about this time every year. It's a math game once you get into the SEC, and you can make it really difficult on yourself from a math perspective like LSU did last year. If you get off to a bad start, you can also give yourself some room for error if you can get off to a hot start. And LSU has that opportunity because you're playing the worst team in the league in your bullpen. And not just the worst team in the league, by far the worst team in the league in your ballpark the first weekend of SEC play. Getting off to a 3-0 start would just be massive, massive, massive for LSU. But first, you got to play 5 games this week. Got 2 midweeks, and then North Alabama comes in this weekend, and then you get ready for Southeastern Conference play the following weekend with Missouri. So a little bit of the dog days here as you get toward the end of non-conference. The newness of the season is worn off. You're still kind of yearning for some competition tick up. You're not going to get that this weekend with a bad North Alabama team, but it's around the corner. Missouri will be there, and then you'll get into the teeth of it the next weekend as Southeastern Conference play really kind of cranks up. So just a few thoughts on the SEC weekend that was in baseball. Our Monday shows are brought to you by Gulf Coast Office Products, GCOPnet.com. All your printing, scanning, copying needs, Gulf Coast Office Products, Trey Beal and Company do a phenomenal job. Check them out at GCOPnet.com. First hour's in the books here. Had a lot of fun. Talked to LSU baseball pitching to start things off. I didn't mean for it to be overwhelmingly negative. I'm just grading on a hard curve here. And LSU's starting pitching, I think, left a little bit to be desired over the weekend. Offensively, I thought LSU was phenomenal. Talked about that in the second segment of the show. Then we did a little bit of basketball at 1:30. If you missed any of that, you want to catch it on demand, you can find it wherever you find your podcasts. It's 1045ESPN.com, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google. Just search Hunt Palmer Show. Like, subscribe, rate, and review. If you want your football content, Hunt on LSU, Hunt on Saints. It's all wherever you find your podcast or, of course, on YouTube. We got a lot to do in hour number 2 as well. The NFL Combine closes its doors this afternoon. What did Will Campbell do for himself? What did Zy Alexander do? We'll talk a little bit about that. Reed Darcy from The Advocate is going to join us at 2:15 to talk a little bit about LSU's women's basketball team and where they go from here. Blajay Johnson in a walking boot. Tigers lose to Ole Miss. Then at 2:30, we'll talk about the Saints potentially releasing Tyrann Mathieu. Is that a good idea? We'll talk about it. We'll pause for Sports Center. Come back with us for hour number 2. You're listening to a Lundy Gras edition of the Hunt Palmer Show on 104.5 ESPN Baton Rouge.
The Hunt Palmer Show.